everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Now, the actor Burt Reynolds had his fair share of flops in the 1980s, and one of them was the movie Stick. This was an action thriller based on an Elmore Leonard novel. In fact, Burt Reynolds encouraged the film studio to purchase the rights to this novel for $350,000. Anyway, Burt was behind the camera and in front as the star. So Burt was big around this time, and this is a movie star giving it his all. And I think he's a very charismatic actor. I actually think he's an underestimated actor. I think he ticks all the boxes. He can do comedy, he can do action, he can do drama. He can do it all, really. And this is just another sample of his work when he was a bona fide big star in the mid-80s. Now, Stick came out in 1985, and Burt shot this film in Florida, and he felt that he'd done a wonderful job. He thought he'd made a good film, and he was excited to get it out there into the marketplace. But unfortunately for Burt, the studio heads at Universal felt very differently about this film. They didn't enjoy it at all. They had a screening and they thought it was terrible. And they said to Burt, look, we don't like what we see. And basically they said to Burt, look, we're going to have to recut this film, we're going to have to rescore this film, and we're going to have to reshoot this film. So Burt had completed production, and the studio enforced reshoots. In fact, they enforced that many reshoots that the whole second half of the film had to be reshot. Now, the movie, when you look at it today, it's kind of a movie of two parts. The early part of the film is very serious. The second part of the film is lighter in tone. So the studio obviously thought this was a little bit too hard-boiled for 1985, but it's weird in a way why they wanted to dilute this film. I mean, they had Elmore Leonard's book, they had some good source material, but for one reason or another, they wanted a softer film. They wanted Burt's charisma dialed up a little bit more. They wanted to add some humour to it, and they just wanted to make it a more even keel action piece. Now, Burt had directed a film in the early 80s called Sharky's Machine, and if you haven't seen that one, it's well worth checking out. But Sharky's Machine was a really hard-boiled action thriller, and that film pushed the envelope when it came to violence. And at the end of the day, Sharky's Machine was a much darker Burt Reynolds project. And they obviously felt that they didn't want Stick to go that dark. So in the end, they lightened the tone, they got Burt and the cast back for reshoots, and the film just got changed. There was a reshuffle there, and Burt, as time went on, lost interest in the film. He thought he had a great product at the start. He was really, really happy with it. But when he was forced to do those reshoots, in some ways he kind of phoned it in. He was a little bit low-key when he did them, and he was just missing that drive and that passion that he had initially. And the film, as a result, suffers from an uneven balance. Now, this is a movie that came out when Rambo hit the cinemas and Fletch with Chevy Chase came out. So it was a pretty stacked box office in 1985. And this is what you would call an action thriller. And in many circles, you'll hear that this film fell short because of its problems. But it's just so entertaining. If you forget about that and just enjoy what you see on the screen, you'll have a lot of fun with it. Now, this film didn't fare too well at the box office. It cost them about $22 million to make, and in the end, it wound up making only $8 million. So it was considered a disappointment. So a bit of a missed opportunity. I think that negative buzz about the reshoots really killed the prospects of this on the big screen, and that's a shame for Burt Reynolds. As we know, his career kind of faltered towards the end of the 80s, and he moved back into TV work. And some of those TV gigs were quite promising, but this was kind of a bit of a slide for him. Stick underperformed, and that was a shame. So from 85, 86, right up until when this movie came out on DVD in 2010, I hadn't seen Stick for all of those years. It was a Burt movie that just faded into obscurity, if you will. But regardless, I still think it's a very fun film. It offers a lot of action, suspense. There's a little bit of romance here, and it does lighten the tone as it goes along, and there's a few laughs. So as a Burt Reynolds movie, it is very entertaining. Maybe it could have been more. But it turns out that even Elmore Leonard, the writer of the novel, he's seen the film and he's stood back and went, you know what, it doesn't resemble my novel in any way, shape or form. So the writer himself has kind of disowned this one, and I think the unpleasantness of having to do those reshoots kind of dampened the tone for Burt as well. It's not one that he looked at fondly in his catalogue, but I think this deserves a second look. It is very entertaining, and if you haven't seen it in years, check it out, because I think that you might be surprised with the quality of this film. So Stick, not Burt's most famous film, but a movie that was trying to make it big in 85, and some bad press hindered its box office, and it deserved better. And I still enjoy this movie regardless. So if you haven't seen it, or you haven't seen it for a while, I think it's well worth checking out. I think Burt Reynolds puts in a very charismatic performance, as you would expect. So until next time, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all again very soon.